I think that what's happening with Trump is much simpler.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a compliment. Because Westerners are very bad at doing complex things because they think they understand. They live in abstractions. And they come to the Middle East and they have these abstractions, and they use terms that are very abstract terms, like moderate and extremist.
Mm-hmm.
I've never met a moderate, and I've never met an extremist. I meet people who think they're right and live in deep stories, and you want to know the story, you'll understand them. But calling them these things doesn't mean anything. And so Trump has kind of wiped the slate clean and said, you know what? I don't know the first thing about these people. And I'm not interested. I don't want to know. And I'm not going to learn the first. And I'm not going to spend the time it takes to actually dig deep into theirs. Like what I just described is a cartoonishly simplistic overlay on top of which other people are acting in very complex ways. I don't understand it enough for me to develop an American foreign policy for the Middle East that is deeply embedded in the Middle East's realities. Why would Trump think he does? And why, right? So what I think Trump does, and I give him tremendous credit for this. I'm not sure if it's a good idea on government reform back home, but this is a great way to do foreign policy, which is he wipes the slate clean and he says, what the hell is America's interest? What's America's interest? America's interest is massive investment in the American economy. America's interest is to keep the Middle East from falling into China's hands. America's interest, it has a few interests, and that's it. That's what I want. You give it to me, you're going to have America. You don't give it to me, you're not going to have America. America's support, America's
investment, yeah.
Why are the Saudis promising Trump well over $1 trillion of investment in the American economy over the next 4 years? They literally said in a statement that this would be over 4 years, meaning within Trump's term. What is that promise? That promise is we will be so valuable to you that you will defend us. That's
he said to the prince, "I like you too much. I think I like you too much. We love each other too much. It's amazing." But his charm and ability to do that. So you're saying that
it's a simplicity.
The promise, yeah.
It's a simplicity.
Yeah.
Obama came to the Middle East the first time. By the way, also skipped over Israel in his first visit back in 2009. And it was a message to the Israelis that he's not Bush. And he went to Istanbul, and then he went to Cairo, and he delivered in Cairo a speech to the Muslim world in which he said, we're America, and we have all these ethics and values, and you're Islam, and you're beautiful, you're not bad. Don't believe what people say. And it was this arrogant, ignorant silliness. And Obama's foreign policy then immediately crashed and burned on every single issue, not just with Netanyahu, but on every issue. Nobody remembers today. And it's really important for Democrats to know this, because Democrats have this obsession with thinking that their morality is enough and that it's shared and that their vocabulary proves that they're the good guy. And so everyone will hear their vocabulary and everybody will dance together under the great, moon, the solstice. And that's not how the world works. Islam did not listen to Obama and say, oh, he gets us, he's nice, he's not those icky,
even though he was a Muslim.
Bush.
No, I'm just kidding.
Look, he spent some of his childhood in Indonesia. I think that created some affinity, which is legitimate and reasonable. But the point is, it was.
What was different about his apology tour versus Trump's current tour, which was
because it sounds like they said the same things, like you're beautiful. You're great.
So
what's the difference?
People should listen to Obama's speech. It was all moralizing.
In Cairo.
It was all moralistic, and it was all America had behaved badly, basically Bush in Iraq, and it was all But
isn't that what Trump just said with these interventionists and you guys built yourselves and all of that? So isn't there a parallel?
There's a parallel in the sense that he doesn't want to be interventionist in the Middle East. He doesn't have that American arrogance, which is frankly earned. America also democratized half the world. I mean, also it failed massively in many places, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, etc. But it isn't unearned. It isn't completely ridiculous to look at America's history and say, maybe America knows how to democratize and de-radicalize. Israel doesn't know. I can tell you that. The French don't know.
Right.
Maybe America does. The answer is this generation of Americans do not, right? But there had been a generation that did. So, no, but I think that the main problem was, look, I'll give you an example. Obama then wanted to restart the peace process. So he sent Hillary Clinton, Secretary of State, to the Middle East with a package deal that they announced ahead of time. And the deal was Israel would freeze settlements and the Gulf states would normalize relations with Israel. And she came to the Gulf states and they welcomed her, had a whole visit. And then they said to her, yeah, no, thanks. Not so much. I don't know, like, why would you announce this ahead of time just to fail? Like, no, we're not normalizing relations with Israel for a settlement freeze as a show of goodwill toward And then she comes to the Israelis and says, you still have to give us that settlement freeze before even negotiations begin. And what that did was it convinced the Israelis that whenever Obama wants something from the Israelis as a quid pro quo, there's never a quid pro quo. It's only from the Israelis. Mm-hmm. It immediately diminished a guy who had tremendously high favorability ratings among Israelis at his election. It crashed him in Israeli public opinion. And they lost trust.
And still the fundamental difference of Trump saying we're non-interventionists and giving them credit for the nation building. What's the main difference in
Just
Obama's
one last
posture?
thing. One last thing about Obama. I'm sorry to harp on it.
No,
feel free to cut it. But the point is that what it did even worse was it actually pushed the Palestinian leadership away from the table. Because suddenly the American president was demanding from the Israelis a precondition for negotiation as a settlement freeze, by the way, including in Jerusalem, that no Palestinian leader had ever demanded from the Israelis as a precondition for negotiation. And suddenly the Palestinians had to demand more. Palestinians were coming to Mahmoud Abbas and saying to him, hey, the Zionist American president was pressuring Bibi more than you pressure Bibi. And Abbas was actually forced to because Obama outflanked the Palestinian leadership from the left, now Abbas was forced to make even more. So the entire process in 2010, when he squeezed out of Bibi a 10-month settlement freeze, Abbas couldn't even come to the table.
Right.
That is the ignorance of an American coming to the Middle East thinking they understand how things work and having the exact opposite thing happen. What Trump just did was say, I don't know anything. I don't know anything. How many hundreds
I like your marble.
I don't know anything. How many hundreds of billions of dollars do you want to invest in my economy? Because that's what this conversation's about. You want to give me a tiger? Give me a pet tiger. I don't know. But how many hundreds of billions of dollars are you going to invest in the economy? And then, we're such best friends.
And now,
and that's it. It's so simple. It's so plain. And it's useful.
And as an Israeli, how do you see him like a little bit sidelining Israel in that conversation? Do you see that as useful, as just part of the...
I don't. So the first answer is I don't know what's happening vis-a-vis. I don't know what they're thinking about Israel. My impression is that Netanyahu has failed to make the case to the Americans that he has a way out, that he has a conclusion, that he has an end to the war that makes sense, that everyone can see on the horizon.
Which simply is what Trump wants also, just an end to the war.
Any kind of explanation of any. What the hell is the Israeli strategy in Gaza?
Right.
Is there also something to be said about the Arab world generally saying we can't look like we're working with Israel until the timing is right? In other words, ceding that territory for another time. Trump is saying we can have this conversation without having to involve Israel so that normalization can incrementally...
Yeah, but I think even more than that. Trump is saying, what does normalization give America? We know what it gives Israel. What does it give America? And the Israelis haven't made a great case.
Right.
And by the way, I put all of this at Netanyahu's door. I mean, he has told Israelis, for his people, him personally, have told Israelis, not always in these words, but for 15 years, the Democrats are a lost cause. So it doesn't matter if we burn bridges with them. So he'll burn bridges with them. And then he'll come around and say, and Trump will give us everything we want. And then Trump comes along and he's like, what is good for America? Now, he does want Israeli-Syrian peace. He doesn't want that war to happen. He does want, but what's the strategy in Gaza? Now, I think that I have been able over the time period with, my one job, is to figure out the Israeli strategy in Gaza. Bibi has not made it easy. So why would the Americans understand what the hell the Israelis want and are doing? What is the future? What's the future with Iran? Are the Israelis competent? Does the Israeli government know what it wants? Why do they constantly posture and pompously declare stupid things that make them look bad? The Israelis look to the Americans, I think, at this point, incompetent. And that's, I think, what you're seeing. It's not a sidelining on purpose. It's not an ideal. It's not Tucker Carlson not liking Israel or not liking Jews. I honestly think it's the Israelis just not looking like the competent ally America would like them to be, and therefore America's moving on.
So just in a very simple way, they don't fit into the plan right now. So just do what needs to be done for America.
Yeah.
Not nefarious, just simple.
Is America is there a silver lining there that America's going to say, Israel, do what you have to do, and we're going to move on to other conversations and not micromanage and scrutinize and put a spotlight on you and have to approve every single strike or military operation? Is there something there is that distance healthy?
I think the Israeli response to that distance needs to be distance. In other words, I think that in as much as we have come to depend on America, we have to not be dependent. It's wonderful to have allies. I think something else, this is going to sound weird, the fact that we have this tremendous ally and the technology that America allows us to field, the F-35s, and many other technologies, and the funding that allowed us to pursue all the missile defense at the level that we pursued it, there's no country on earth today as ready for the future of warfare, which is missiles and drones, as Israel. Literally nobody, not even close. And a lot of that was funded by America, essentially as an R&D shop. The Pentagon owns a lot of the tech that the Israelis developed with American money. For example, Iron Dome is jointly owned.
I don't know that.
The Americans are not suckers. If they fund something of yours, they also get to use that thing that you then develop. The Pentagon has a very bad R&D system, and they use the Israelis as an R&D shop.
Small side note, when people say America doesn't get as much from Israel as Israel gets from America, that's a good argument.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the Pentagon is sentimental about Israel. It just finds it extremely useful.
Yeah. They're contributing a lot in that relationship.
It's not just some sugar daddy, okay, here's a little more cash, do your thing. There's a
100%.
strategic benefit to this technology being developed for
100% of the money given to Israel for military needs has to be spent in America. 100% of it.
Right.
So it is a federal grant to the American defense industry. Right. Totally.
Okay.
Also, all tech developed with American money is co-owned by America. That's an American. By the way, it used to be 80% Obama in signing the MOU for 10 more years of American aid upped it to 100%. So anyway, the Americans.
You know things. He knows things.
Guys, the Americans are not suckers.
Yeah.
But they're well prepared for war. You're saying
the Israelis are extremely well prepared for war, much more powerful than their enemies.
Why do they need boots from us?
Back in October. You make good boots. What do you want from me? We're buying boots from you.
The uniforms are hand-me-downs. I mean, how do you square that? They're still using squeegees, so I hope so. I believe you.
I'll tell you another thing. The Israeli army that now has this amazing gap of tech between itself and its enemies, because it's so powerful, can no longer win. So you have, for example, we flew 120 planes over Iranian airspace back in October, and they couldn't shoot at one of them. The Iranians have spent a very long time, someone wise put it, thankfully investing in Russian air defenses, which was a very good thing for Israel, because Israel could just fly around in Iranian airspace anywhere it wants. All of Iran is vulnerable to Israel. If Iran was a bigger enemy, a more threatening enemy, it wants to threaten Israel, it wants to destroy Israel, and it wants to build a nuke to do it. But if Iran was more capable and less vulnerable, and Israel was less powerful, the war would be more desperate, and the Israelis would be more fierce, and we would have to win, because it wouldn't be safe not to win. But it's safe not to win because we're so powerful. So there's an argument to be made that a lot of these wars never really end. The Israelis aren't allowed to end them because of this enormous gap in power that convinces everyone, including a lot of Israeli military planners, that it's safe to just leave the enemy intact forever. Well, that kind of thinking brought us October 7th. So, the American alliance, there are many reasons to rethink it. First of all, America is not dependable. It's not dependable. Sorry, guys. Maybe it shouldn't be. Right. Maybe America should always look out for America's interests, and if that means throwing Israel under the bus one day, throw Israel. I don't know. I don't know what the morality is, but it's not. So we have to be prepared for there not to be an America. That includes in the Air Force. We have planes that, without America, we can't replace broken parts. And it's not always to your advantage to be unbelievably powerful, because then sometimes there are conditions under which wars don't actually end because you can never properly fight them.
And if America's going to go America first, Israel has to go Israel first, and it sort of has to go both ways. So this is an interesting pro-Israel case for getting off of foreign dependency on the United States.
Also, you don't want us to go off the reservation. You don't want us to start selling our drones and AIs to China. So you would hold us close. Why? Pure interest.